For nearly 20 years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were the picture of perfection. A Hollywood icon with a radiant smile. A country music legend whose songs spoke straight to the heart. Together, they seemed untouchable. A marriage that could withstand fame, fortune, and the constant glare of the public eye. The red carpets, the awards, the casual hand-holding for photographers, they all told a story. A fairy tale meticulously curated for fans. A narrative written in headlines, smiles, and Instagram posts. But behind the cameras, behind the glittering facade, a different story was unfolding, one no one could see. By 2025, that story could no longer be hidden. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly. A missed phone call here, a delayed flight there, a distracted glance that lingered too long. For years, the world believed in their unshakable bond, because Nicole and Keith had perfected the art of showing strength. Yet even the strongest love can crack under constant performance. And when perfection is demanded, even the most devoted hearts can break. Nicole Kidman had faced heartbreak before. She rebuilt her life after a very public divorce, raised children under the scrutiny of the media, and forged a career that defied expectation. Keith Urban carried his own battles, a history of addiction, the pressures of life in the spotlight, and a heart sometimes seeking solace in music, touring, and distance. Together, they had weathered storms most couples could never imagine. But surviving is not the same as thriving, and years of compromise, sacrifice, and quiet endurance were beginning to weigh heavily. Then came the moment that changed everything. Keith Urban left their Nashville home. No argument, no confrontation, just a quiet exit that left a family broken, a world shocked, and Nicole forced to face a devastating truth. The life she had worked so hard to protect was slipping away. Within days, Nicole filed for divorce. Officially, it was irreconcilable differences, but that barely hinted at the reality. Beneath those words were decades of love, loyalty, and silent struggle. The world would dissect every headline, every move. But the truth, the part no camera could capture, was far more painful. A marriage that had become a performance. A woman finally refusing to shield a man who had stopped fighting for her. This is the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. Not the tale of a flawless Hollywood marriage, but a story of love tested by fame, hardship, and human vulnerability. The perfect illusion had ended, and the truth, messy, raw, and deeply emotional, was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Long before heartbreak, long before the silence that would one day speak louder than words, there was a spark, a collision of two worlds that, on paper, seemed so different yet somehow destined to meet. It was 2005, at a gala in Los Angeles honoring Australian talent abroad. Nicole Kidman, 38, was at the height of her Hollywood stardom, yet carried the weight of past heartbreak. Her marriage to Tom Cruise had ended in one of the decade's most scrutinized divorces, leaving her to navigate fame, motherhood, and solitude. Her adopted children, Isabella and Connor, were at the center of her fiercely protected life. A family she would defend at all costs. Keith Urban, a year younger, was already ascending in country music. A man whose songs spoke of longing, redemption, and the search for stability. To the world, he was confident, charming, and rising fast in Nashville. But behind the guitar and polished smiles was a man wrestling with his own demons: addiction, self-doubt, and the pressure to prove himself. When they met that night, it wasn't a Hollywood cliché. There was no instant spark announced to the world. Instead, there was pause, hesitation. Keith, quietly intimidated by Nicole's presence, didn't call for months. Nicole, intrigued but patient, waited. When the first conversation finally happened, it flowed effortlessly. Hours of laughter, vulnerability, and connection. Two souls recognizing in each other a reflection of their hidden scars. By June 2006, they were married in Sydney, in a candlelit ceremony that felt almost timeless, intimate, emotional, sacred. Nicole in a shimmering Balenciaga gown, Keith singing with raw emotion, promising devotion. Friends and family later recalled a night where reality and fantasy blurred. Yet even in that glow, the first shadows quietly formed. 4 months later, Keith checked into rehab for alcohol addiction. For many, it could have been the end, but Nicole stayed, visiting, supporting, shielding, forgiving. It wasn't just love, it was a promise to herself. A second chance at the family she had almost lost. A refusal to give up on someone she believed in. The following years were a delicate balance. Publicly, they were Hollywood's ideal couple. Privately, they navigated tours, long nights, and the relentless pressure of expectation. In 2008, Sunday Rose was born, followed by Faith Margaret in 2010. For a while, it seemed the fairy tale had found its rhythm. But fairy tales are fragile. Beneath the smiles and family snapshots, a quiet tension grew. Keith's tours kept him away for weeks. Nicole's film projects carried her across continents. Love, once a sanctuary, was stretched thin by distance, exhaustion, and the constant performance demanded by fame. It was during this period that the first cracks began to show. Missed calls stretching into days, absences turning into weeks, small misunderstandings quietly stored like unspoken debts. The spark was still there, yes, but it flickered against a backdrop of exhaustion, expectation, and lingering resentment. By the time the world cheered at their public appearances, Nicole and Keith were performing not just for cameras, but for each other, struggling to keep alive a connection that was quietly fraying. Fans saw love, but the truth was more complicated. Love existed, but sometimes it simply wasn't enough. By the mid-2010s, the couple was the ultimate Hollywood-Nashville power duo. Red carpets, awards, music videos, magazine spreads, all painted a picture of enduring love. But behind the polished smiles, a quiet tension had begun to fester. Distance was no longer only physical, it had become emotional. Keith's tours stretched endlessly, nights filled with performances and early morning flights. Nicole's film projects carried her across continents, leaving the home they once shared as a fleeting concept, a place where two exhausted adults struggled to synchronize lives that refused to align. Conversations that had once been intimate were reduced to brief check-ins. Messages went unread, calls unanswered, shared plans dissolved under the weight of silent frustration. Friends noticed first, the way Nicole flinched at forced public affection, the impatience flashing across Keith's face during quiet moments. Despite the cracks, both fought to maintain appearances. On red carpets, their smiles never wavered. In interviews, they spoke of unwavering commitment, of love, of partnership. Yet the illusion was increasingly fragile. The perfect marriage, admired by fans for nearly 2 decades, was beginning to feel like a performance. By 2023, insiders whispered about quiet separations within their home. Keith's tours became longer, Nicole's projects more consuming. They were coexisting under the same roof but living parallel lives, retreating into work to avoid the confrontations their hearts both feared yet needed. Nicole, who had spent years protecting her family and healing others, was running on empty. She had been the constant, the caregiver, the glue holding their marriage together. Keith, once dependent on her support during rehab, now seemed to seek freedom in distance, even at the cost of connection. The first public sign of fracture appeared subtly. Nicole attended a few events alone, while Keith's social media hinted at new energy. Rejuvenation or distraction, nobody could tell. Fans speculated, journalists questioned, yet neither spoke openly. The tension built like a silent crescendo, heading toward an inevitable breaking point. Early 2024 marked a turning point. Nicole was filming Practical Magic 2 in London, a project demanding focus and long hours. Keith, meanwhile, quietly arranged a residence in Nashville. To friends, it seemed a practical decision. To Nicole, it was the first sign that the man she had loved and protected might already be beginning to walk away. Months passed, with Nicole holding on to the belief that they were simply weathering a rough patch. Her faith in their marriage was a lifeline she refused to let go. But when Keith made no effort to bridge the distance or engage emotionally, the truth became impossible to ignore. By June 2024, the separation was no longer private. They lived apart, communicating only when necessary for their daughters. To the public, appearances continued, smiles, events, and red carpets, but the intimacy had vanished. For Nicole, the silence was deafening. For Keith, the distance may have offered freedom. Or perhaps it was a quiet acknowledgement that their marriage had reached its natural end, their final public. Outing together was a Nashville soccer match on June 20th, 2024. Observers described them as awkward and distant, like actors forced to share a stage after the curtain had fallen. Friends say that night, Keith made the decision to leave their marital home for good. Nicole returned from London to find an empty house, a permanent absence that words could not soften. The divorce became public on September 30th, 2025, but insiders confirm Keith had already signed his portion weeks earlier. Nicole's filing, citing irreconcilable differences, was a formality, a necessary step toward closure, rather than the trigger for the split. Keith's rare, unguarded admission that he had blown it to smithereens stunned fans and critics alike. Unlike the rehearsed statements typical of Hollywood couples, this confession was raw, unfiltered, and painfully honest. For years, the world had seen them as proof that love could survive fame and pressure. In one phrase, Keith acknowledged that the marriage had faltered, largely under his own weight. Rumors swirled of a potential other woman, fueled by moments on tour with younger guitarist Maggie Ball. Playful stage interactions, social media speculation, and paparazzi glimpses ignited tabloids. Neither Keith nor Maggie confirmed anything, leaving the public to wonder if it was a genuine connection or simply the distractions and pressures of life on the road. The unknown intensified the drama. Nicole remained largely silent, refusing to confirm or deny speculation. The media frenzy magnified the sense of betrayal, while fans wrestled with the tension between fantasy and reality. The couple who had once embodied hope and stability had become a cautionary tale about love's fragility under relentless public scrutiny. Behind closed doors, Nicole's focus shifted entirely to her daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. The public image of the perfect wife dissolved into the private struggle of a mother working to protect her family. The custody arrangement, Nicole's request for primary residential custody, reflected not a desire for control, but for stability. She wanted to shield her children from upheaval and preserve a sense of home amid chaos. Keith, meanwhile, grappled with guilt and reflection, focusing on music and personal reinvention. Reports suggest that his upcoming work may draw from the turbulence of this period, turning private pain into artistic expression. Despite personal hurt and public scrutiny, both parents remained committed to co-parenting, honoring shared responsibilities even as their relationship had ended. The emotional toll went beyond logistics. Friends say Nicole wrestled with feelings of betrayal and heartbreak, compounded by the knowledge that she had fought for a marriage long after the other partner had emotionally checked out. The silent drift, which had grown over years, became a wound now exposed to public view. Nicole Kidman's journey after the split is one of resilience. For decades, she had rebuilt her life after public heartbreak. Now, facing another ending, she applied the same grace and strength. She returned to her work, focused on family, and reclaimed her private life. The silence that once felt unbearable became both shield and space for reflection. Keith Urban, too, is facing a new chapter. Honest about mistakes and personal struggles, he confronts the consequences of choices long in the making. His confession, raw, messy, and unguarded, offers a rare glimpse into the humanity behind the celebrity. The story of Nicole and Keith, now complete in this first chapter, is both cautionary and inspiring. It reveals the pressures of fame, the fragility of even the strongest love, and the personal cost of living life under public scrutiny. It also underscores resilience, accountability, and the enduring bond of family, even when romantic love dissolves. Hollywood may never again see a couple like Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. For years, they symbolized hope, devotion, and the possibility that two demanding careers could coexist with family life and affection. Yet their story reminds us that human emotions, exhaustion, and unmet needs can unravel even the most admired partnerships. In the aftermath, Nicole moves forward with dignity, prioritizing her daughters and her own peace. Keith confronts the consequences of years of decisions, personal struggles, and public scrutiny, while also facing the chance to grow anew. The end of their marriage is not just an ending, it is a transition, a reminder that life is messy, love is complex, and some of the hardest battles are fought quietly, behind closed doors. The world witnessed a fairy tale unravel, but what remains is a lesson in honesty, accountability, and resilience. Two people who loved, who fought, and who ultimately chose survival, both for themselves and for the family they built. And perhaps, in that truth, there is a kind of beauty the cameras never captured.